everyone lost their mind over Bill Nye, the Science Guy's new show, which I haven't seen. I knew that he was going to get a show, but I had completely forgotten about it, and I only got reminded that that show existed, and I don't even know if it's still on the air. To be honest, I don't know what channel, what network. I don't know if it's HBO, MTV, AMC. I don't know who the fuck is airing this show. I'm not really interested. But everyone was losing their mind because he did a segment about sexuality and gender, I guess. And I guess I saw the clip, and he's saying that we're all born with a sex and gender is on a spectrum, right? And all the people, I guess mainly on the right, lost their mind, calling him a sellout, calling him all kinds of names, that he's pandering to SJWs, social justice warriors, or feminists. I don't know who the fuck he's pandering to. And I honestly didn't need Bill Nye to tell me that gender is on a spectrum. I always thought it was. I always thought that that's why homosexuality exists. Now, if I, for some reason, mistake gender with sexuality, I just ask you to maybe ignore that, because every time I talk about this, I end up mixing up the two words. Not because I don't know the difference, but because I was sort of misspeak, or I make the error that when I'm trying to say sexuality, sometimes I'll say gender, or sometimes I'll say sexuality instead of gender, but I know the difference, or at least the way I see it and the way I've always thought about it. And that's what I always thought, that gender wasn't a spectrum, that it wasn't a black and white thing. Okay, sexuality, yeah, you're born with a penis or a vagina, so I get that. But sexuality, to me, it always seemed like there seems to be like a shade area where like I said, it's not quite black and white, because you take men, for example, you've got very manly men, men's men, and then you've got men that are somewhat more feminine. And then you've got women that are very feminine, and then there are women that are more, have more masculine features. Not necessarily physically, but the way they behave. Quite honestly, there are women out there that if I were to date them, I think I'd be the woman in that relationship. That was probably a sexist comment, wasn't it? Oh, well, you know what I mean. Uh, or maybe you don't. I don't know. Like, the way I see it is like, here's men and here's women, right? And there's a line in between. And gender just sort of moves all over the place. And sometimes it crosses that line. And that's when somebody who's born with a penis might feel more like a woman for some reason, something in their head, which I don't quite understand, to be honest. I'm not an expert, but I'm not claiming to be. But I gotta think that there's something going on in the mind of somebody that sees themselves or feels like a woman, even though they have a penis, because that gender sort of crossed that line. And as you get closer to that line where you might be gender neutral, you tend to take on the opposite sex. So you become a little bit more feminine if you're a man, or if you're a woman, you become a little bit more masculine. And that's how I see it. That's how I've always understood. I don't know if that's exactly how it is, but that's how I see it. That's why gender spectrum, to me, that explains it very well. It makes sense to me. Not every man is the same. Not every woman is the same. You do see more, like I said, manly men, and you see more very feminine women out there that you can sort of put them in that category. You're like, oh, that's a very feminine dude. You take a guy like Lindsey Graham. I think he's a senator from the South or something. He gets his balls busted all the time because he claims to be a man, but he's very feminine in the way he talks, the way he behaves. Think about Barry Manilow, that for the longest time he claimed to be straight, and he came out gay in, I don't know, the early 70s. I think that's how old he is. And no one ever thought of him as being straight, really. Everyone was just like, it wasn't even news. It was like, yeah, Barry Manilow is gay. No surprise. No one was shocked. If it would be like if is it Richard Simmons? I think it's Richard Simmons. That dude who's like some always trying to get people to exercise and eat healthy, even though himself, he's kind of chubby himself. He's never come out as gay, but if he did, no one would be surprised. The dude is very feminine. Again, I don't really care what you are, how you feel, but it's something that spectrum to me always made sense. And again, I didn't need Bill Nye to tell me, and I don't know why everyone's losing their mind over that. And to me, it was never an issue of being politically correct or trying to pander to the left or social justice warriors or anything. Anyone that doesn't believe that the gender spectrum exists, to me, is not seeing the bigger picture. I think they're only seeing what they are going to see in their lifetime. And what I mean is that we don't know where humanity is going. We don't know what humanity is going to look like in 1,000 years from now. I mean, even if you just go back 500 years, what we call English now, we wouldn't even be able to communicate. You wouldn't be able to communicate. Even though they were speaking English, you wouldn't even be able to communicate with someone from 500 years in the past. So who knows where we're going to go 1,000 years from now, considering how fast technology is moving. I personally believe that it is moving towards a gender neutral world where sexuality might not even matter. Gender is definitely not going to matter. That's the way I see it. And nothing we do is going to stop it. I think that's where it's going to go. I think technology is going to take us there. Biology is going to take us there, because we're going to probably be able to control it. We're going to be able to control our own biology. Think about artificial insemination. It's going to be 100 times more advanced than what we have now. I think people in the future are going to look back at our world and think, can you believe that women walked around with a big belly, pregnant for 9 months to give birth to another human? When in the future it's possibly that they are going to have artificial wombs where you're going to insert an egg with a sperm and you're going to be able to mess around with that gene or DNA or whatever, and you're going to be able to have whatever you want. Maybe male, female, or that might not be an issue. You might just worry about hair color, eye color, the health of that child. And that's what I mean about that in the future, gender or even sexuality might not be an issue, because you're not going to have males and females to reproduce, because they're probably going to do it artificially. GMO, genetically or modified organism, except for humans. I mean, genetically modified organisms, I see it as it already exists, except it's Mother Nature doing it. But we're going to take that away from Mother Nature and we're going to be the ones doing it. Personally, that's my prediction. Obviously, I can't guarantee that, and I'm not going to be around to see it. Those changes take a long time to happen. So all these people fighting about this gender spectrum thing, or they're up in arms and that somehow they think that the world's going to stay the way it is. It doesn't. Nothing stays the way it is. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, things are going to change. The 50s didn't stay like the 50s, even though people wanted America, let's say, to stay the way it was in the 1950s. It will always change. It will always evolve, and it's hard to predict where it's going to go. My prediction is that it's going to go towards a gender neutral world. There's going to be a lot of neutral things in the future. That's what I believe in. That's what I think will happen. I don't see us it just continuing with this male-female thing in the future. I think that is the future, to go just gender neutral. And not because, I'm just not attached to any of these things. I don't care. I don't care if that's where the world goes. As long as humanity can still reproduce itself somehow and maybe make ourselves better in the process, I don't care whether there's females or males. I'm not attached. I'm not championing for either one. I could give two shits if males and females no longer exist and there's like this one being in the future that is just human and it's got maybe both sexes, or I don't know where it's gonna go. I think people just are not seeing the big picture, and they don't realize how much science and technology and our thirst for knowledge and understanding how the world works, where it's gonna take us. I mean, there are people that just simply had to die with their shitty ideas. There are people out there that, and I'm not saying you got to kill them, you just die of natural old age. There are people who died and will die believing that gay people are a sin, or being gay is a sin, or it's an abomination, and that they shouldn't exist. Or that they are possessed by evil spirits, the devil, or that it's not a choice. I believe it's a choice. I think it's a choice. I'm convinced that it's a choice. And there are people that just simply will not ever change their mind, and they will just die out, and the new generation will replace whatever those ideas were. And usually bad ideas died with the people that have them in their head. Just like there are many people that died believing that black people should be slaves. And they were never convinced otherwise. They died believing those things. And new generations came and decided, no, that was a bad idea, and we're not going to continue that. And I think that in the future, when I'm 80, when I'm dead, the new generation is not even going to care. It's not even going to, this gender thing is not even going to be an issue. They're just going to look at people like, yeah, you're just a human being, whatever. You want to be a woman, you want to identify yourself as a man or as a female, good, whatever. Now, there is some ridiculous ideas out there that I think don't necessarily make sense. Like, I know there are some people that think that they can just change their gender on a whim. Just like 1 minute I'm male, the next minute I'm female, or I'm both, whatever. It's like today I'm male, now I'm female, the next day I'm female, or like, yeah, I'm just constantly changing back and forth. I don't know, that might be ridiculous. Maybe I don't understand it. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, and some people will probably say that, but to me that seems a little bit ridiculous. I don't think we're at that point yet, genetically speaking, where one day you're a female, the next day you're a male. I mean, I guess you can say that, but we don't read minds. We haven't developed telepathy yet. We haven't evolved to that point, so we don't know whether you're male today or female. So that seems like maybe you're calling out for attention, or I don't know what you're trying to do. I know I've heard of cases like that. I don't know what that's about, but maybe it's something that I don't understand at this point. But I don't think that's the future, because it really doesn't make sense if in the future everyone's just changing sexes. I think, to me, it makes more sense to go towards being neutral. So many changes are coming that we can't, I think most people can't imagine. I mean, I think right now scientists are trying to see if they can extract our consciousness. And if we're able to do that, I think humanity is just never going to be the same, because we might be able to create a matrix where our bodies might die, but our consciousness will be able to move into this matrix, and it can be whatever you want. Literally, we can create heaven for ourselves if we can create a matrix. So you can die and your consciousness moves to this matrix where, if your heaven is you have 10 supermodels, Victoria's Secret supermodels, sucking your dick every day or whatever you want, and if that's what your heaven is to you, then that's what it will be, because your consciousness will exist in a virtual world. And if we can ever achieve that, I think that will be the next step. We will continue to exist in a virtual world that might be able to communicate with the real world as we see it right now. I don't know why I just used that example for a heaven with the supermodels and the blowjob. I was trying to keep this somewhat of a serious video, but I guess that went out the window with that comment. Yeah, I know people are gonna think, oh yeah, at this point I'm projecting my own fucking fantasies about what I would do if I could extract my consciousness and upload it to a matrix heaven. I haven't given it much thought, to be honest, but it might involve a blowjob or two, but not necessarily from supermodels. I don't know what kind of debauchery I would be up to if I could somehow extract my consciousness up into a virtual heaven. It would be interesting if I could be able to do that, though. like I said, things will don't stay static. For better or for worse, things are going to change. And in 100, 200, 1,000 years from now, humanity will be unrecognizable. To the point, I think in the future, not just genders will be neutral. I think languages. Most languages will probably disappear, and we'll have one or two languages, maybe a few more, but ultimately one. I think that makes sense to me. It's very convenient to only have one language so that we can all communicate. So right now, it seems to me very archaic to have so many languages and to have this barrier between humans that keeps us from communicating a lot quicker in a more efficient way. I think one language is the way to go. Again, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm not going to see any of these changes, and this is only my prediction. I'll never know whether I was right or not, unless you can somehow extract my consciousness before I die of old age, if I get there, and I'm able to see it from the virtual world and see if my predictions were right. Same with borders. I think it doesn't make sense to me to have borders. I think in the future we might just have a planet where you'll be able to go anywhere you want. Now, that doesn't make sense right now. I don't think it's a good idea to do it right now. That's something that will take a long time to get there. Again, maybe 1,000 years to get to a point where there may not be any more borders, and you'll just be able to travel freely all throughout the planet without the need for, passports or visas or whatever. I'm sure we'll have some sort of ID anyway. And I know people may disagree with me and think conspiracy theorists, they start yelling things like New World Order, One World Government or something, which to me, it's like, that seems fine to me. I don't see what the problem with that is. That idea might unite us. And the one reason why one world government or no borders might not work is because of the corruption that exists right now. Again, they're not seeing the big picture. I think people that think like that those that think that one world government or a new world order, Alex Jones, they see that as a negative. It's because of the corruption that exists right now in our political system, or how we run the world right now. It's very easily corrupt. And democracy or social democracy, which I think that's what we have, whether you want to accept it or not, we have democracy with a little bit of socialism in it. That's basically what the Western world is. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just that the greed and the thirst for power that corrupts men leads them to do horrible things. And I think that's what's sort of ruining or giving our current political system a bad name. But in the future, if we can somehow get rid of that corruption, I think we can have a one world order, one world government, and a planet where people can just travel from one place to another without having to cross this imaginary borders. Again, that's another prediction that I think that's just what's going to happen. I think that's where we're headed. And again, I'm not saying that it's going to happen in my lifetime. It's probably going to take a long time. And with gender, I think science, that's where it's going to take us. And who knows what we're going to look like once we're able to manipulate our DNA. People might just get bored of the shades of skin that we have right now. And someone might be able to genetically modify their organism so much where they might choose to have green skin or blue skin or a different eye color that at this point doesn't exist. Who knows? Once we're able to do that, I'm sure we're gonna get very creative about what we can do with our genes, and we're probably gonna get bored with the current shades of skin that we have, and we might start messing around like that. Who knows what's going to happen, but whatever it is, it's going to change. Nothing's going to stay the way it is right now. Ultimately, I think if we manage not to kill ourselves or destroy ourselves, I think that's where the world is headed, where there's no real gender. You might still have a penis or a vagina, but because those things, I think, would take a lot longer to evolve into something that's maybe sexually neutral, where You might have both or none. I don't know. I'm sure that takes a lot longer than just the moving around in the gender spectrum or not having gender at all. I think we are moving towards a world where there aren't going to be any borders, and languages, definitely, I do believe that for sure we're going to have less languages to the point where we might only have one or two. And to me, that makes sense. Being able to communicate with everyone around the planet without having to learn multiple languages. I don't know. I don't see what the big uproar, the big deal with Bill 9 talking about gender spectrum is. I always looked at it that way. That's what I always thought it was. And yeah, I never needed Bill 9 to tell me that.